I think when you recover from a bad romance, you also think of Circe, Calypso, you know, the vamp or the side trip on life's journey. And Penelope's in the background of the Odyssey at all times. She's at the end of the line. But there's a lot of forays and side trips in the Odyssey that makes it surprisingly modern.
The Odyssey has been recreated as entertainment countless times. This silent film version was made in 1924, long before anyone thought of a character like Big Bird. During the Middle Ages, the works of Homer survived primarily in the monasteries, but the Renaissance resurrected him, and the first printed editions of Homer appeared in Florence in 1488. Soon they were available all over Europe. He was a hit again. His poetry has been translated from the Greek into every tongue imaginable, and he has inspired more than just the translators.
Homer's the beginning of the epic tradition. Without Homer, I guess there would have been a Virgil, but he wouldn't have been as good. There would have been a Dante, but he wouldn't have been as good. There would have been a Milton, but he wouldn't have been as good. And so on, through Keats, through Tennyson, through James Joyce. That's where Homer goes. And that's why a whole literary tradition comes out of him, depends on him, and by the same token is constantly bringing him back into life.
More recently, Mark O'Donnell has brought him back to life, if only to get over him. Actually, Homer is the protagonist's homosexual lover in O'Donnell's latest novel. But the earlier Homer has an important place in this writer's intellectual universe, the Odyssey in particular.
Well, the neat thing about the word Odyssey is it's entered our language as both the definition of the novel and the definition of life itself. That you say, oh, that was an Odyssey, whether you're talking about a long book or a crazy life. That's a sign of the Odyssey's power. First of all, that it's the first novel, and that's sort of primordial. Plus, you mix in the magic and the travel, and it gains quite a power and stature. And for my novel, which is a ridiculous farce about, you know, miscrossed romance in modern times, I thought it was cheeky of me to borrow from the greatest of novels for a loose model. But secretly, I also wanted to borrow some of its magic and mystery, because even in the craziest of farces, there's some of life's magic underlying.
Even more than nation-building myths for the Greeks, Homer's works were the templates for the Western literary tradition. From the Iliad comes tragic drama, from the Odyssey, the novel, and the action-adventure hero has never died. Homer gives us two books and two kinds of hero. Which do we prefer, Achilles, who throws himself into the fray heedless of the outcome, or Odysseus, who schemes to win and survive?
Indiana Jones is certainly one of the most popular heroes of today. All my little nieces and nephews know who he is. And he's more than creatures like Rambo or Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, who are just mere brute force. He's like wily Ulysses in that he's got a PhD in archaeology, and he can not only, you know, dodge the arrows and steal the object, he can also recognize its value and appraise it for you.
Like Indiana Jones, the heroics of Odysseus are more complicated.
He has one other added quality, which is a very fertile intelligence and a willingness to lie in order to get what he wants, which is certainly not part of Achilles, who hates, like the gates of hell, the man who thinks one thing and says another, which is exactly a wonderful description of Odysseus. He's doing this all the time.
It is no accident that Odysseus is the great master negotiator and diplomat, because he's really good at not saying what he thinks, but saying what will be useful under the circumstances, for which he got a very bad reputation.
Homer had anticipated Machiavelli. Complete honesty may not always be the best policy.
People always say, why can't they say what they really mean? Because if you say what you really mean when you have a volatile situation like that, you mean, I'd like to bomb you back to the Stone Age. That's what you really mean. And so instead, you say, artificially, we would like to reach some kind of compromise that we can both live with, so that everybody can continue living. So it is an absolutely essential part of, the city. That's where the Greek word comes from. Civility, civilization, it's all the same thing.
I think Odysseus is a hero who can be admired for different reasons at different times. He's a survivor, basically. People like to see him as a hero, but in fact he's almost an anti-hero.
For quite a while, virtue was essential for a proper hero, but not for Homer, and obviously not for us.
If you depicted a perfect person now, it would have to be for a lampoon, Dudley Do-Right, Roger Ramjet, an absurd paragon of virtue. We doubt virtue now, so super virtuous heroes are a little harder to take.
Still, we want our heroes to have a moral compass. We want them to try to do right.
To do the classy thing, and they occasionally say, what would, Frank Sinatra or St. Augustine do in this case? What would Abe Lincoln do? They talk about a collapse of morals. My idea of a hero is not necessarily vanquishing in battle, but treating everyone with respect and surviving, if nothing else. That's the bottom line. We often regard mere survivors as heroes, and as despairing as that sounds, it certainly is true enough.
Homer makes clear his preference between the two sets of heroic virtues. In the end, even Achilles votes for survival. Circe tells Odysseus that he must visit the underworld before he can continue his journey. There he meets Achilles again, a dead Achilles.
Achilles is the same tough character he is in the Iliad, no nonsense. He doesn't put up with any guff from anyone. And Odysseus tries to mollify him by saying, look, Achilles, you were honored in life, and here in the underworld, everybody honors you. Achilles looks at him and he says, look, don't praise death to me. I'd rather be the meanest slave on earth than king of the dead. The tales have a purpose. They are not repetitive. They show Odysseus facing a number of different challenges, and as he goes through these tales, in each one of them, he is invited to forget the return home, to forget home, to stop living in a way, to die, to cop out. But he has learned something on these journeys, and I think what he's learned is life with all its suffering is better than anything else. Stay alive.
Let's make sure we don't blow the whole mission.
Things were getting colder. We were not getting any sleep. The strain and the stress was slowly gathering on us.
Now we're proceeding to...
And of course, as we approached the moon, it got to be bigger and bigger and bigger.
Going back up the Odyssey.
This is my second trip out there now, and not to land was a real trial, a mental trial for me.
For Apollo 13, the moon had become a place they had to pass by. Just as in the Odyssey, the adventurers had to pass by the seductive sirens in order to get home.
And we looked down at those ancient old craters as we skipped across. There is a tremendous drawing power. Just 60 miles below, we could land and walk on the surface of the moon.
The siren song. Odysseus is told to stop up his ears against creatures whose beautiful song lures sailors to their death. He has himself tied to the mast, so he can both listen and resist.
The sirens became aware of the sea-swift vessel running by them, wherefore they clearly sang to us their song. Hither, come hither, O much-praised Odysseus. Come to us, O glory of Achaea. Bring your ship to land so you may listen to our voices. Never yet has any man in a dark ship passed us by without lending ear to the honey-sweet music of our lips, to go away spirit-gladdened and riper in knowledge. We know all that comes to be on the much-nourishing earth. My heart desired to listen, and I told my companions to free me. They bound me in further bonds and constrained me more.
Very similar to the Odyssey and Odysseus, being so close, instead of tied to the mast, we're tied to the spacecraft, our only means of getting home.
What the sirens offered is one of the big questions. It's been a conundrum since antiquity. It was a question that the Emperor Tiberius asked his grammarians, and they didn't know how to answer it. We do get part of the answer in the Odyssey. The siren song is given in part, and the literary interpretation is that probably they offered knowledge of what had happened in the past and what would happen in the future. This is a great lure to Odysseus.
T-9.
Who wouldn't want knowledge?
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Ignition, flight. Roger. Liftoff.
Apollo 13's change of fortune meant its crew never reached their destination.
Looks good here, flight. Good agreement.
But like Odysseus, they learned something about themselves. And like Odysseus, they were on the adventure of their lives.
Going back up the office.
How do you look? Well, good. Fine, we'll go. Okay, fire. We're go, flight. Looks good here.
I think we are all somewhat explorers. I mean, we all have that fascination about doing things, whether it's in our fantasy or whether we actually do things.
Guidance. Go, guidance. We've had a hardware restart. I don't know what it was. Okay.
Houston, we've had a problem. Okay, Houston.
Life would be rather dull if you didn't have some exploration, some adventure, something that you can look back on and say, I really enjoyed that, or I got by it okay, or I never expected that I'd have the courage to do what I did.